I'd like to welcome you guys to this week's report. Today is Thursday, May 9th, I think, might be the 10th. As usual, I'm not sure. We got through that little bit of wind on Sunday and Monday last weekend there, and it's been quite a bit improved here this week. And even better news, it looks like it's to be great through next weekend as well. So, I think one of the things that's been holding back the fishing in a lot of areas has been all this unstable weather we've had, and it seems like that might be out of the way here, for at least for the short term, hopefully for the long term. So let's head to the Channel Islands and get started. You know, the boats up there are still catching sea bass and halibut, and that's when they get off the dock and get to the islands. It's been windy, it's been rough, water's cold. You know, I think what's holding that back definitely is a little stability. You know, we get a few days of calm weather, and we're going to start catching some fish up there, I think, especially as we head into the next full moon cycle. The Coral Sea has been fishing Rosa. They've been getting sea bass. Some trips and other trips are just getting rockfish, but the rockfish are getting up to real nice quality, big reds, lingcod, stuff like that. Out of Ventura, the Aloha Spirit's been fishing Santa Cruz, catching halibut, seeing some sea bass. Not really catching any right now, but you know, like I said, that water stabilized, those things will start biting a little bit better. And the gray light out of there has also gotten a few sea bass on their recent trips. I just saw in their report today that they saw a couple different schools, but they weren't cooperative. And as usual, those guys are catching them on those big white fluke baits, which they're casting on lead heads and they sink through the water column. I honestly haven't done that. I have no idea how to do it, but if you go on one of those sport boats, I'm sure they'll tell you exactly what you need to do to get bites. It sounds like you just cast them out, let them sink to the bottom, hop them along a little bit, and burn them back to the boat and make another cast. So definitely better than soaking the bait on the bottom or fishing a squid on a dropper loop for that kind of thing. But yeah, great weather up there this weekend. Hopefully we start seeing some fish being caught. Private boaters could probably go take advantage of fishing cod at Rosa or Miguel. Maybe look for some sea bass up there, a big halibut as well. So lots of good options up that way. Heading down this way, San Clemente Island got quite a bit of coverage last weekend, both from sport boats and private boats. For the sport boats, they're fishing yellows. They're not getting big numbers, but they're getting some fish. I know the Apollo and the Fury were over there. I think there's a few other boats that I don't remember. They had yellows both on the front side and back of the island and backside east end of the island. Fish on the front probably caught on yo-yo or on service iron or flatline baits. The fish in the back are probably the deeper stuff that's there this time of year on yo-yo jigs, things like that. If you're heading out on a sport boat, I'd bring some of both. My preferred service iron is a Taddy Starman 112 in mint and white, and my preferred yo-yo jig is a Taddy 40 heavy in mint and white as well. And either of those jigs will get the job done. I'm not much of a bait fisherman, so I doubt I'd be flylining, but probably be prepared to flyline sardines. I think that's what they're using for bait. The bass guys got over there as well. A couple different boats. My friend James Little went over there. He had some really nice calicos. I think he fished the east end probably. And then my friends Gary Reyes, Jay Jones, and Mike Bonhoff went out with Benny Florentino. It's interesting to go out, have guys that have their own boat charter Benny or however that worked out. I never did ask them, but it looks like they loaded up on some real nice calicos there. Had a lot of fun fishing. It was good weather there Friday and Saturday. Sunday you wouldn't be able to do it, but yeah, good options. Another boat that's been fishing over there lately is the Blackfish out of Newport Beach. They're a 6-pack boat. They're doing it on a 3/4 or full day trip, they call it. Leaves in the morning, comes back in the evening. They've had good halibut fishing. They're catching a lot of nice rockfish up there. And they are on the lookout for yellows, and I'm sure that in coming trips they'll probably be catching those as well. You know, you hear me talk about that boat a lot. The reason I do is because a good friend of mine owns it, and super fishy guy, Mitch. And it's, you know, there's so many great opportunities available for private or charter boats as opposed to sport boats nowadays. I'm not knocking sport boats. It's definitely a thing that a lot of people love to do, but for someone like me who doesn't like to be on a boat overnight and certainly doesn't want to be around a bunch of other people and doesn't like to drive slow. I get kind of frustrated on sport boats these days. But you know, you can charter a boat like the Blackfish or go on one of their open party trips where they take 6 guys, they run to the island at 20-something knots. You get over there quick, you don't have much people on the boat. It's not that much more expensive than an overnight trip, really. If you go on one of their open party trips, it's not cheap, but for me, it'd be definitely worth the investment. Just like I'd rather charter a Freeman to take me to Cortez Bank to fish bluefin if I was doing that rather than go on a 3-day trip. You know what I mean? So just something to think about. But yeah, they got trips online. They're one of the few smaller boats that's running open party trips regularly. So you can check out, they're out of Davies Locker. So you can just check the Davies Locker website and see when they have openings if you're interested. Yeah, a boat, as usual, that I don't know where they're fishing is the Pride out of 22nd Street Landing. They had a trip the other day. They went 4 for 9 on seabass up to 42 pounds. And they had a handful of halibut up to 40 pounds as well. There's a few areas where they could be catching those fish, and also given the weather, there's areas that they could not be catching those fish, I would think. So it kind of narrows it down a bit, but I'm sure that the guys that are interested in doing that kind of stuff on their own boat already know where a boat like that is fishing, and if you're going on that boat, you'd rather not have me talk about where they're fishing either. So that's just one of those things. I'm going to skip Catalina, not, you know, the Caligos and bonita and nonsense like that, rockfish are biting there, but nothing really to write home about. Along the coast, those bigger sea bass are starting to show up. The first flag went for the Balboa Angling Club for Steve Beck got one. I don't know how big it was. It was a nice sized fish. And a couple days later, Jazz Moorhead got a 74-pounder. I'm assuming they're all fishing along the beach. That, you know, local stuff that they always catch them at this time of year. This is also the time of year where you start seeing sea bass inadvertently hooking them when you're fishing like the Newport pipe with crankbaits. We've hooked a bunch and landed one only ever, the real big ones. But yeah, those things can show up at any time. They're looking for bait balls along the beach. I'm not a sea bass expert either. I don't like to sit there with bait, so I'm not the guy to ask about it. But I think you just go out and find an area where those things are some kind of structure they'd be around. Hopefully find an area with some bait around. Put a couple mackerel on different depths out there and drift till you get bored and go home, or maybe catch sea bass. So that's kind of the deal there. I fished yesterday at PV. You know, my back's been bothering me last week. I was talking about it. It was a little bit better yesterday, so I decided to completely re-injure it by running around the boat all afternoon, which mission accomplished. But yeah, it was horrible up there. On paper, it looked like it'd be a really nice day. Water temperature was up, no wind. But, you know, we got out of the harbor and we have that green water that's been very prevalent this spring up there. We got about 3 feet of visibility, it looks like, and all the kelp leaves look like they're dirty, covered in junk. It looks like kelp that's dying off, but what it is there's all the nutrients in the water. Get that big wet swell, a lot of upwelling, water's starting to warm up, you know, 62 to 64 degrees. Getting those sunny days, all that micronutrients are starting to bloom, turning into red tide, other things like that. If you watch my first SoCal Bight Fishing Academy, I talk about the phytoplankton and all the other nonsense. Well, we have a lot of the chlorophyll around right now. So hopefully that leads to the food chain starting up. But up there, you know, we had good current in a lot of areas, but there was not a scrap of bait anywhere. Didn't see a single bird. No, I take that back. I think we saw 4 birds from Point Furman to Rat Beach and Torrance and back. Incidentally, there was about 50,000 cormorants sitting on the breakwall on the way in, so I don't know what that was all about. They might be protesting. Anyway, yeah, it was really bad fishing. Matt caught this one photo-worthy fish, but other than that, it was tough. And I was trying to shoot video, and my GoPro broke, and I'm glad it did, because it would have just been a lot of boring footage of blank casts and cursing bleeped out. But I've got a picture here of Katie, our little Chihuahua who had the surgery a while back. She's doing a lot better. And Rachel decided to draw eyebrows on all the Chihuahuas last week, and they're still staying on. I don't know if she used a permanent marker or what, but She's gives a little bit of personality. Anyway, so yeah, all the water stuff that's happening is pretty standard. It hasn't been standard the last few years because our schedule had been a little bit quicker with the water temps we'd had. We definitely had colder water this year. This is standard springtime stuff. You get the upwelling, you get red tide. There was patches of red tide up there, patches of red tide in the harbor. That's going to happen as all this algae and stuff blooms. And I don't know if it's called algae, whatever you want to call it, chlorophyll blooms. And what's going to happen is that water will reach a certain temperature, and then that stuff will kind of die off. Water will clean back up. Things go back to normal until we get another big upwelling during the summer, which happens later, but that's going to be more localized as opposed to spread so far. But yeah, there's a lot of bait out in open water. Running the cat the other day or 2 weeks ago, there's bait all over the place. Didn't see any on the coast, but you can see, bait outside 100 to 200 feet of water out there splashing around, but it's not in the right place. But there's plenty of food here for these tuna and everything to come up this way. I think it's going to be a little bit later than last year, but it's going to be business as usual, I think, as far as the offshore scene goes this year. But that's a ways out yet. So let's head down to San Diego. Same deal down there. The weather kind of screwed everything up on Sunday. The SBS had their nighttime bass tournament on Saturday night, and it was already a little bit rough. And my friends Tom and Cash Troop, father-son team, that have a little aluminum boat. They went out and braved the conditions outside of San Diego Bay, and they said they could run it 8 miles an hour, and they only swamped the boat once while fishing, but they ended up getting a nice 25-pound bag of four sand bass and 1 calico to win that tournament. I think that's their first win, and really proud of those guys. That's a couple guys who scrape stuff together with duct tape and baling wire every week and go out there and just hammer away. So it's really great to see those guys have success, and congratulations to them. But Coronado Islands, yellows are biting down there, not very well. They're seeing a lot more fish than they're catching. Fish are just doing their normal stuff early season. Something's going to happen. A light switch is going to get thrown, and things will bite eventually, but not yet. Maybe like the stuff up north next full moon. The weather down there has not been as bad as the stuff up here, so it's not like it's been getting beat up too bad. It's just that the fish are keyed in on something other than sardines. But they're still getting some fish on the surface iron down there. I'm sure they're getting them on a yo-yo if they get sonar schools. Private boaters, I'd hold off on going down there. You're just going to drive around and burn a bunch of fuel before you see anything. I think it's all on the electronics right now. So, in other non-private boat news, the bluefin tuna bite is happening again down, I'd say from 50 to 150 miles below the border, maybe even 180. I saw some fish down by San Clemente earlier this week, I think. The guys from San Clemente actually caught some. I assume they were down there. But I got a big area of bluefin tuna down there. The sport boats are all fishing them at night, multi-day trips, 2-day trips, 3-day trips. The Shogun had a 2-day trip. They got back from almost every fish over 100 pounds. Independence was on a 2-day. They had some fairly inexperienced guys, and then most of the fish over 100 pounds, they suffered some pretty heavy casualties, as you can imagine. I'm sure the deckhand and cook and captain's arms were tired of winding in 90% of the fish that were hooked, which is often the case down there. And the American angler, they were down there and they were saying bring the 100 pounds. So that fish is in day and a half range, long 1-day range. The problem is most fishing's at night, so that doesn't really align well with the schedule. So if I was going to go on a 2-day or 3-day trip, maybe some boats will start running reverse 1.5 days. We'll have to see how that goes. It's all nighttime stuff with the jigs. And there may be fish around to be caught during the day, but the problem is that when those guys are fishing all night, most of the guys are sleeping all day and not really fishing all that hard. So I'd imagine that eventually if that stuff gets a little closer, one of the full day boats will head out there and we'll get an actual handle on what's happening. But there's basically a clear path of clean water, relatively stable temperature-wise all the way up into U.S. water. So I don't think there's really anything that's going to be a upper boundary for those fish. I think they're just going to hopefully continue to slide up here. I talk about this every year, but I talk about it again. if you go on one of those trips and you're hooking those bigger bluefin and you have on the right gear, let's say 80-pound test or 100-pound test, especially those fish you're hooking at night on those knife jigs, you need to pull really hard on those fish, and if you do, they come in fairly easily. I watched a video by these West Coast jigger guys. I was going to share it, but I was going to ask them first. Those guys pull on tuna on sport boats the way we pull them on the skiff. We never give them a second to rest. So basically, you hook that fish, and once it stops running, either down or out, you need to keep turning the handle the entire time. So the line has to be leaving the spool or coming onto the spool, and you know, and if it's not, and you're stagnated, and you're just sitting there like this, and you're tired and everything else, that fish is resting more than you are, and they'll lock into that thermocline, and you cannot budge them out of that by using the same amount of pressure. So I understand that, you know, a lot of guys get worn out, winded. You know, you got to pace yourself a little bit with these fish. Private boaters as well, you know, try to, as somebody who's trouble breathing through his nose, me telling you guys to breathe through your nose is kind of a funny thing, but you need to stay calm, pay attention. Don't be afraid to bump that drag up considerably after the first run. You know, if you're fishing 100-pound spectra and a, 200-pound or whatever leader you're fishing to a knife jig, after that first run, once I got that fish stripped down, that drag's going to sunset, and I'm just going to be pulling as hard as I can the entire time. And sometimes it's sunset plus palming the spool with your hand as you're trying to just, get it a couple inches. It's not like you're trying to pump the fish up 3 feet. If you can get a half a handle turn in low gear, you're going to move them. So what happens is those fish, they're like, oh God, it's 100 feet down, and I'm completely exhausted. Well, as long as it's at 100 feet down, it's going to be very hard to budge for about 10 feet. And then once it breaks, you're going to break it out of that spot it's in. It's not like you have to fight that fish that hard for 100 feet. You're going to break that fish out of where he's sitting. He's going to probably squirt away from the boat. Then he's tired ready. So once he's up higher, now you're winding down and picking up that line. Now he's going to stall out at 30 feet. Now he's going to see the lights from the deck, and he's going to get a little squirrely by that. And you're going to have that fish up in no time. You just have to get past that point where they stall out. Same thing on the skip. Once the fish is under the boat and it's not taking any more line and you cannot gain line, what we do on a skip is drive away from them. If we can't budge them. That change in angle, they'll squirt out. You'll lose line, but you'll gain it back very quickly afterwards. I'd rather lose 50 yards and have to reel that back in than sit in one spot for 2 hours and not budge the fish. But anyway, hopefully I'll have some video of me catching bluefin, and I can do a little more explaining later this season if my back's better. I might have Matt do the fishing and I'll just be the narrator. But yeah, spring's here, fish are biting, great weather. Get out there and catch some fish.